for joining us on today's pre-26 Nigerian Economic Summit conversations. My name is Adenike Adeyemi. I am the Executive Director for Faith Foundation and also the facilitator of the NESG's Community of Practice for Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises. The NESG's MSMEs Community of Practice focuses on 4 critical areas: capacity building, education and business support, access to finance, access to market infrastructure, and policy and regulation. We do this by working with ecosystem stakeholders through policy dialogue, like we're having now, advocacy, and collaborations with other people within the space. Today, our conversations will be focused on the topic, the pandemic and Nigerian MSMEs, impact, priorities, and strategies.
And we have here today, very, very strong facilitators and the chair as well as panelists who are going to address this topic. As much as possible, we are going to make it interactive. So do start to put your questions if you have any in the question and answer section. And I will take that to hand over to the session chair, Mrs. Wonu Ade-Tayo, who would give us her opening remarks.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Nika is back. Okay, good.
Okay. Nika, do you still want to say something before I go on?
No, please. We hand over to you to please give us the welcome remarks from the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. And I say well done to Bumi and to yourself and to everyone, that has decided to be a part of this. I want to emphasize the fact that this particular session, I don't want us to take it for granted. It might look like something simple, but it has a serious impact going forward on how we survive as a nation. And so on behalf of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, let me start by saying the heads of ministries, departments, and agencies of government, captains of industry, members of the international community, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this pre-summit event of the 26th Nigeria Economic Summit, which is jointly organized by the Summit Group and the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget, and National Planning, and hosted, as you can see, in collaboration with Faith Foundation. This year particularly, we seek to engage stakeholders in what we have tagged Big Conversation for Action. The idea is really to shape strategic partnerships that will chart a path to recovery and, more importantly, build resilience for our country's economy, businesses, as well as households. And these are to ensure that we're able to put Nigeria in a stronger position within the changing world order. Everything is changing. And unless we are intentional, even the nations and the economies that do not rise up by themselves will just get swept under the wind. Now, this Big Conversation for Action is going to be driven by a series of pre-summit events. These pre-summit events have been designed to kickstart discussions on the summit theme. And what's the summit theme? It is building partnerships for resilience. It becomes very obvious, particularly in the new normal, that the best way to ensure resilience is to partner with others. So you know what you do best and you let others support you, all right? So collaboration is the new competition. And so that's why that's our theme, building partnerships for resilience. Now, this theme will enable us to convene a wider range of stakeholders to deliberate on a broad set of thematic and sectional and sectoral issues with necessary outcomes that we know will help keep our businesses sustained and put the economy on the path to growth. Now, Nigeria's vibrant entrepreneurship ecosystem has long been beset with challenges and gaps, that make running a business in Nigeria exceedingly difficult. In fact, despite boasting of over 41 million active micro, small, and medium enterprises that are employing over 70% of Nigeria's workforce, these gaps and challenges have even become more apparent with the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this has continued to hinder growth and sustainability of businesses within this ecosystem. Now, in response to the challenges within the Nigerian entrepreneurship ecosystem, the Nigeria Economic Summit's MSMEs community of practice has since its commencement focused on 4 critical impact areas. These are areas that we feel, the few that will deliver you the maximum, talking about the Pareto, the 20% that will deliver you the 80% impact. There are 4 areas. Number 1, access to markets and infrastructure. We all know, even this, as we were having this webinar, we still had to face technology infrastructure issues when we suddenly lost our moderator and she was not there. So these are issues that we need to deal with. Second, capacity building, education, and business support for the MSMEs. Thirdly, access to finance, and on a 4th level, policy and regulation. The NESG's community of practice has been working with the ecosystem stakeholders to plug gaps around these key areas through policy dialogue, through advocacy, and other ecosystem stakeholder engagements. Now, these key areas are also doubling as our thematic focus areas for the community of practice. The recently released labor force statistics by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, shows very clearly an increase in unemployment rate by 400 base points, moving from 23.1%, as if that's not bad enough, that's like 1/5, all right, in the 3rd quarter of 2018 to 27.1% in the wake of COVID-19 in Nigeria. And during the 2nd quarter of 2020, that's by the time we have moved from 23.1 in 2018, we have moved unemployment rate to 27.1 inadvertently. Also, a report on the impact of COVID-19 on MSMEs, led by Faith Foundation, showed that almost 95%, I mean, you might as well just say 100%, of the 1,900 businesses that were surveyed were significantly impacted by COVID-19. It is saddening to note that over 80% of businesses surveyed were micro businesses, and about 82% of them said they were likely to lay off 1 to 5 employees. Just imagine the humongous impact on security, on lives, and on the economy at large. Now, these findings point to the urgent need for stakeholders to work together to enable businesses build resilience through support programs for MSMEs and targeted policy design. And I'm so very happy that we're having this dialogue between the public sector, private sector, and the MSMEs themselves, okay? Because we need all hands on deck, all right? So that we can help to increase the access of the MSMEs to funding support, business advisory, regulatory reliefs, data, infrastructure, and other crucial means of survival and sustainability for the MSMEs. Now, just before I round up and hand over to the moderator, I want to emphasize something that people might be saying, look, this is, these MSME issues in Nigeria. The reality is that it has been projected that the global workforce will be about 6 billion by 2030. And out of this 6 billion, 2 billion of them are projected to be employed within the informal MSME sector. So if we're talking about 33% of global workforce being engaged in this sector, then you can imagine that whatever we do to support the MSMEs is going to position us not only to solve the challenging building up insecurity issues because people can't feed, people can't sort themselves out. So it is in our best interest, it's in our collective interest as Nigeria, as a community, as a people, and in the interest of our economy that we focus on the MSMEs. Therefore, securing the buy-ins of businesses, the service providers, and the MSME hubs to adopt best practice as they pivot toward digitalizing their services to support the MSMEs. We believe in NESG that with sustained efforts from the private sector, active collaboration with the government and citizens, Nigeria's MSMEs ecosystem will be able to draw the required investments that will make the MSMEs a major contributor to economic development in the national interest. We therefore look forward to more trend-setting and collaborative development of the Nigerian economy. Today's webinar, therefore, seeks to convene stakeholders to deliberate on the efficacy of the ongoing support interventions and strategies to adopt in order to enable resilience within the Nigerian entrepreneurship ecosystem, within the architecture of a new economy. The key word here is enabling resilience. So no matter the wind that blows, the MSMEs will continue growing so that they can provide the needed impact on the Nigerian economy. I trust that you will contribute your quarter and lend the needed voice and supportive steps to make today's engagement a resounding success. I wish every one of us fruitful deliberations. And I want to say on behalf of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group again, thank you very much and God bless our country, Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wonu Adetayo, for the very warm welcome from the NESG. For those that are just joining in, we're having our pre-NES 26 Summit conversations on the pandemic and Nigerian MSMEs, impact, priorities, and strategies. I would now like to welcome our first speaker to set the context for the panel conversations that will happen subsequently. Presenting on the impact of COVID-19 on Nigerian MSMEs is Professor Melvin Ayogu. Professor Ayogu is a visiting scholar at the Center for Public Policy Alternatives in Lagos, and also a professor of pedagogy in economics at Emory University in Atlanta. He's previously been a fellow of the Africa Growth Initiative at Brookings Institution, and also a visiting scholar to the International Monetary Fund and to the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. His work focuses on kleptocracy, governance infrastructure nexus, and value configuration of economic activities in margin markets. Professor Ayogu will present highlights of a policy paper based on findings from the impact of COVID-19 on Nigerian MSMEs, and also speak on best practices being adopted and implemented by economies around the world to mitigate the COVID-19 impact. Professor Ayogu, I now invite you to make your presentation. Please note that you have 20 minutes. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Nike. Good morning, everybody. In the interest of time, I would plead that all protocols have been observed. And with due respect to the chair of the panel, I will now share my screen so I can get on with the presentation. Okay. All right. I've been asked to speak on two major topics that connect the MSME and the ongoing pandemic. I mean, the pandemic is so overwhelming that there's no other business in town than to address the consequences of the menace. And it comes from two directions, saving lives and securing livelihood. And the focus is to address the public policy required to contain and control the spread of the pandemic, which is a necessary condition for our long-term survival, and strategies to secure that livelihood. If you're alive, you have to eat. But we feel strongly, at least according to the survey, that one of the major ways of securing livelihood is through assisting MSMEs. Of course, this is not holding brief for MSMEs. The purpose of this talk is to demonstrate, if you like, that as MSME goes, so goes Nigeria. And therefore, assisting micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria is really tantamount to helping the ordinary Nigerian. That's where we should be putting the palliatives, if you like. And I don't say this because I'm a mouthpiece for MSME. It's really supported by fact. And part of my presentation is to make that point very clearly and spell out what it is exactly the government should be doing. I have not worked out the details of what they should do because that is context, how they should do it, because that is context specific, but we sure have a clear idea of what they will do. Okay, so let me start with the dual nature of the problem. People tend to think in terms of saving lives and securing livelihood, but it's really not a dual problem. It's a composite solution. You can't do one without the other. This is not about health and economics. It's about a joint consideration of saving lives, staying alive, and securing livelihood. Okay. We have to think about both as a holistic solution, and that is the approach I've taken here. In other words, killing two birds with one stone. And this picture is my favorite. It tells the story here. In the beginning, as you remember, for those of us who've lived through the lockdown, if you step outside, you'll catch the disease. If you stay inside, hunger will kill you. So either way, you feel boxed, almost like competition between the people, the pandemic and its concomitants, which is really to squeeze you. So you can't address one without addressing the other. It has to be a joint consideration. And in that battle, MSMEs is our life link. It's almost like the umbilical cord. And that's the point, again, I want to make by the time I finish this presentation. How is it that the umbilical cord that supports the life support system is really the medium, the micro, small, and medium enterprises? Well, let's start with the strategy for survival, and then later on I will explain how come helping MSMEs is making sure the umbilical cord stays connected. The strategy for survival is the joint consideration of both staying alive and securing livelihood. And that's the new word, resilient. That's what resilience means, that we need to learn how to live with the pandemic. When we had the initial lockdown, people thought they would simply bear down, like in Passover in the Bible, if you're a Christian, and if you're not, I'm sure you've heard it as a folklore, although it's true, that during the Passover, people simply hunkered down and the scourge passed, and then you can walk away and continue your business. But that's not the same with the COVID. It looks like it's here to stay for a little longer, and therefore we need to learn to coexist. That is what resilient means. But learning to coexist with the resilience means that we also have to learn to do businesses differently in that atmosphere. You don't hunker down and let it blow away and continue. It now means we need to relearn how we do things. Okay. Now, before I talk about how we transition to that resilience, what are MSME? It's the supply chain that many people talk about, but few understand its ramification. We always hear about value chain, supply chain, but what makes it work? It's the MSMEs. They're so crucial to that value chain that the moniker or the expression should be, thou shalt not perish. Okay, so if you go back today and you see anybody from government or the organized private sector, you should say, thou shalt not perish. Who should not perish? MSMEs. Why? Because they are our lifeline. How are they our lifeline? Well, look at this summarized picture of the economy. In any economy, you have the households and you have the firms. The households supply their factors of production, they give themselves and the raw materials that they generate to businesses. And businesses convert that into goods and services and sell that back to the household again. And so round and round it goes. When they sell it, businesses make money, but they also pay wages and rent and dividends to those households who supply the factors of production. And that's how the economy goes around. Okay. And this is summarized as business to persons, like the retailer, the mama put you see, the Okada drivers, the bus drivers, or business to businesses, those people that work in the supply chain, the logistics and the transportation that makes sure everything happens. In those crucial sectors, it's the MSMEs that dominate. It's not the big corporations. Okay. And this is why they are the lifeline of businesses, no matter how you look at it. In fact, now that you have the issue of outsourcing of business activities, it even makes it more imperative and places the MSMEs in the middle. That's how you become competitive, even though some components of that clearly becomes a sweatshop and exploitation because of the balance of power. But it's neither here. Today is not the day to talk about the dynamics and the question of fair wages. I'm sure that both the Fed Foundation and NESG have summits devoted to making sure that people get decent wages for their work. That's another conversation. But the point remains that MSMEs in a macroeconomic context is central to economic activities in any country. Okay. Now, given how central or important MSMEs are, the question becomes, what can we do and how should we do it? And as I said, I have not quite worked out the mechanism design for making sure that the distribution of resources are not hijacked. If you live in Nigeria, you know that Nigerians are very astute at warping schemes. It tends to be distorted so that intentions are distorted. So trying to make sure that the mechanism designed for the distribution of the resources are incentive compatible is very important. Okay? And it's something that should be worked out between the benefactors and those who are the recipients of the program. Right. But now that we know what needs to be done and why it's the distribution, the feasible distribution plan is very important, I need to talk about what it is that needs to be done. Okay, and we shouldn't forget about how to do it, because we've heard about the fertilizer scheme, the trader money, the farmer money, Operation Feed the Nation, the palliatives. These are ways Nigerians know how to share money, but they do not use that sharing scheme to raise social welfare. It always becomes aggrandizement and personal hijack of the programs. And hence, I've taken this time to talk about, if you decide that the MSME are going to get the support, they need to make sure that it's not distortionary, that we don't fall back into our culture of spend the money budget rather than finance a planned budget. There's a difference between let's share the money, which is the culture we've gotten into, rather than let's solve a problem. The problem here is that MSMEs need support, and the program should be aimed at solving that problem. That said, let me then lay out how we help them make the transition. What is this journey to resilience that we keep talking about? There are two parts to the journey. One is the mobilize, and the second is the transition. The mobilize means that MSMEs need resources to retrofit or to reinvent themselves so they can comply with the new anti-SARS-CoV-2 business reopening rules. That's a long word, but what does that mean? It means that the business environment should be one that does not propagate the spread of the virus, so that the health ministries and NCDC will certify your business to continue to operate, whether it's about wearing face masks or social distancing or changing the counters and the way you do things to comply. That's the mobilized part. They need money for that. The second, and they need this money when they're not making money. It's almost like a chicken and egg problem. Okay, if we were making money, this wouldn't be a problem, but we don't have money, and yet we're being asked to invent in new ways of doing things. So it's important that they need support. The second part of the journey to resilience is the process of learning to do business in the new environment. Okay, you have to retrain the people that work and retrain yourselves as well, so you can wear your face mask, you don't approach people as closely as you used to do before, and in fact, convince them, appeal to their psychology that your business environment is safe, as well as just hand sanitizers and those things that we were not used to. Okay, we are creatures of habit, but we do need time to learn the new way of doing things and convince people that coming to my business to buy services or goods does not jeopardize your health and existence. Okay. Those things are very important for restoring sales, revenue, as well as enhancing the safety of the employees themselves. Right. Because MSMEs are the majority shareholder in Nigeria's labor force, anything that improves the health of the MSME component of the labor force is representative of the aggregate labor force in Nigeria. So if you do not support the transition by mobilizing, businesses will open, they will jeopardize the lives of those cashiers you see at ShopRite and some of your favorite places. They are bulky in the street that sells things to you. And then the entire labor force is disseminated. So what is good for MSME is good for Nigeria, because MSME, as I keep saying, is the umbilical cord. Okay. And by the way, given the physical scale at which these enterprises typically operate, the per-cost business unit of compliance is not daunting. But if you think about the aggregate benefit to the economy, is very sizable. So on a cost-benefit analysis, this is the way to go. Okay. Now that's one part. The other part is that at this time, these businesses actually need support, both psychologically, because some of them are 1 person, 2 persons, and 5 people businesses, or 10. So those traditional support lines that used to help these businesses have shut down because of COVID. They do need to reopen, and therefore the government should consider a mixture of retrofitting some of those support clinics so that they are compliant as well in the same sense that I've been discussing. And as well as going virtual for others, depending on if you live in the urban area or in the rural areas. In the rural areas, internet is not possible, so virtual support will not work. What should happen, therefore, is those types of support clinics, should be retrofitted so that they are compliant with anti-SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV-2 is the virus itself, COVID-19 is the disease. So the compliance is about stopping the spread of the disease. That's why I call it anti-SARS, because it's antiviral conditions. So if you retrofit those clinics, they can continue to offer support to those MSMEs in the rural areas, and those in the urban areas with access to the internet can attend to the virtual clinics. So in addition to giving money, you also need to give support to people. Now, according to this survey that the Fate Foundation had conducted on the impact, the typological analysis, which is looking at the way in which the economic shock has spread out across the different entities of the MSME, shows that the best thing we could do for the MSMEs to reduce the shock is jump-starting the consumer spending, giving money to the consumers themselves, innovating around the supply chain shocks induced by the pandemic. I've always wondered why the food stuff is so expensive. The pandemic has not affected productivity, fertility of the things that have been planted, but the trucks keep getting harassed on the road as they try to deliver the food. Police is taking money from the people that supply the stuff. So there are all these things along the way that make it difficult for the supply chain to work. So those kinds of things needs to be addressed as well. You give them money, you get the support clinic, and you get the obstacles along the transportation and logistics. It has to work holistically. You can't fix one and not fix the other. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So we need to innovate around the supply shocks, around the jump-starting consumer spending, because there's no point these MSMEs retrofitting the business and nobody has money to come and buy from them.
Excuse me, Professor Ayogu, you have 4 minutes left, sir.
All right. If this is not done, of course, what is going to happen? You're going to have inflation. So if the demand is there, if you give people the money to spend, but you do not fix the supply chain, the demand increases, but the supply response is not going to be there. And therefore, everything translates to inflation. It's already happening. The food prices are unaffordable. And we do know that once prices go up, it's difficult to go down. So it means we're going to live with that for a long time if you allow those prices to edge up. And edging up, it's already doing. So government needs to give them money. It needs to give that money quickly, just like a catalytic converter. That's my favorite example. If you know anything about internal combustion engines, a catalytic converter is the thing that takes the obnoxious gases in the exhaust and it converts it into the less obnoxious. So it's a redox reaction. So if you give money to the MSMEs, it takes the negative impact of the pandemic and it turns it into a less destructive influence on businesses. Okay. If we do not do that, 50% of the workforce will be out of gainful employment, just like the chair of the MSME had said. And this is the view of 80% of the respondents. So for a sector that accounts for over 70% of your workforce, you do not want that to happen. I'm going to conclude on 2 major points, and I'm going to borrow about 3 more minutes from the chair because this is very important. Transportation and logistics, which is the supply chain, is central to a market economy that is driven by supply and demand. When you choke off the supply curve, but the demand keeps increasing, it leads to impoverishment. Nigerians are already impoverished as it were. Number 2, this COVID has raised 2 categories of workers, the essential and the non-essential. Everybody in that audience is the non-essential. Who are those essential workers? The Abokis, the Megadis, the Molue bus drivers, the Uber, the Bolt, the taxis, the Okada, the motorbike people that deliver medicine from the pharmacies, the Mama Put, the cashiers at the counters. It's not the CEO or the COOs. It's these people who risk their lives every day, mostly people in low-paying jobs that require physical presence in order for us to get those things that make our lives comfortable in our homes. It's the Nupeng and the Pengasang people, it's the trailer drivers, it's the truckers. The food we eat comes to our table because the people who grow it sort it. Go to mile 2 on the Badagry Expressway, look on both sides of the road. They keep working even when they are sick. For most service workers, those sick leave is an impossible luxury. They can't go home to self-isolate. They have to do it to keep their children. Where I was living in Lekki at that time, even during the lockdown, these women carry the food on their head and have to go to the construction workers in the morning because they need to sell in order to eat. They are the rear guard actors who keep the frontline doctors and nurses battling the pandemic. They bring in the essential things that are still flowing into Nigeria from the airport to the hospitals. So what the pandemic has done is to expose our fault lines and highlight those timeless imperatives which we neglect at our own peril. So shall we add the neglect of MSMEs to the list of these imperiled imperatives? This is the question. And these are the MSMEs, by the way. If you look around, it's everybody that you depend on in order to lead. So I rest my case at this point. We can't do anything else than love the MSMEs because that is our lifeline. Thank you very much. Have I lost everybody? I'm done.
No, you have not. Thank you very much, Professor Ayogu, for setting the context. providing the background to the conversations and the panel conversation that will start now, emphasizing the point of the integral nature of micro, small, and medium enterprises on Nigeria from a socioeconomic angle, and even using the analogy of the umbilical cord to make that point, and also sharing some of your perspectives on key strategies and policy considerations that we need to deliberate on. I am now going to invite our next speaker, who would also serve as moderator of the panel conversations. I would like to welcome Mrs. Bumi Lawson, who is the Pioneer Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Edfin Microfinance Bank. Edfin is the first specialized education microfinance bank with a unique and well-built products and services for customers within the education system. And she brings with over 32 years of experience in key entrepreneurship ecosystem support for micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria, including financing and business development services. Mrs. Lawson, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nike. Thank you very much. It's indeed an honor to be here. Good morning, everyone. And I would also stand on existing protocols. Well, today I have a very strong panel of discussants who would really address this issue about the impacts, the priorities, and strategies for us to ensure that the small, micro, and medium-sized businesses continue to thrive in Nigeria. So let me quickly introduce our strong panel. We have panelists both from government, from the private sector, and that would address these issues. So starting with ladies first, let me start by introducing Mrs. Umar Aboki. She's the Executive Secretary of the Kaduna Investment Promotion Agency. Mrs. Aboki holds a master's degree in finance and control from the Swiss Management Center, Switzerland, a postgraduate diploma in management science from Kaduna Polytechnic, and a BSc in statistics from the University of Maiduguri. She has over 20 years banking experience spanning various sectors in the banking industry, having worked with various banks, some of which include Guarantee Trust Bank, Sterling, and she rose all the way to become a deputy general manager. She is a member of some professional bodies, including the Chartered Institute of Bankers, the Institute of Chartered Economics in Nigeria, and the Institute of Islamic Banking and Insurance, London. She is married and has 4 beautiful children. Also, welcoming Mrs. Teju Abisoye. She is the Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, LSETF, where she leads a team to deliver on programs targeted at tackling unemployment in Lagos State. The programs are structured to provide financing and leverage for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses, provide them with skills development for youth, and promoting innovation in technology-driven enterprises. Mrs. Abisoye is a lawyer with over 14 years experience, an alumni of the Yale's Women Leadership Program. She has an LLM in International Trade and Investment Law from the University of Victoria and a bachelor's in law from the University of Ibadan. Welcome to the panel. Then from the private sector, it's interesting that we have the women from the public sector and men from the private sector. So, but we also have Dr. Weber Boa. He's the Chief Executive Officer of All On. All On is a renewable energy fund initiative established also in partnership with Shell Nigeria. And he joined the team from Boston Consulting Group, where he was one of the founders of the strategy firm's Lagos office. Prior to Boston Consulting Group, Dr. Boa has spent 5 years with Hess Holdings Group in Lagos. He was also the founding CEO of the Tony Elumelu Foundation. Dr. Boa has worked with the Rockefeller Foundation, Africa Regional Office in Nairobi, McKinsey, and so on. He was born in Jos, so he's a Nigerian, even if he may not readily look it, but we welcome you as well to this panel. And lastly, but not the least, I have Prince Orimadegun. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Agboade. He is a business administrator and is the chairman and chief executive officer of Orefama Pharmaceutical Industry Limited. More importantly, he is the national president of the National Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, NASME, and is a council member of the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Group of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and a member of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So he's here to speak on behalf of the micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. Prior to joining his current organization, he had worked with Glasgow, Nigeria from 1985 to 1994, where he rose all the way to become a general manager for corporate affairs. He has been involved in various national assignments, including being a board member of the Small and Medium Enterprise Agency of Nigeria, SMEDAN, since May 2018, and he's also on the National Council of MSMEs in Nigeria since August 2017. So please also help me welcome all our panelists, and thank you very much for giving your time to be here. And because this topic is really about MSMEs, I want to give the opportunity for MSMEs to be the first to actually address this issue of how COVID has impacted businesses, the interventions, and what priorities they believe should be done to enable MSMEs progress and continue to grow. So I would address this first to Prince to tell us what has been the impact of COVID on MSMEs. How have you seen some of the government interventions? Have they helped? What else can be done to ensure that micro and small, medium businesses continue to grow? So over to you. Over to you, Prince Agboade. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unmute. Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Operator. I bring greetings to all of us from Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. We are currently, from where we are, currently in 33 states, including Federal Capital Territory. I want to, for sake of time, I want to leave the protocol as ideally been established by my previous speakers. The topic, the pandemic, Nigerian MSMEs, impact, priorities, and strategies couldn't have come at a better time. It's very hard. And in sharing my experiences on this matter, I will follow quickly mention four areas. One, MSMEs and their importance to Nigerian economy. Two, impact of the pandemic on MSMEs. Three, impact of measures introduced by Nigerian government. And four, what MSMEs want. I will start briefly with the first one. That is MSMEs and their importance to the economy. Even the lead speaker has alluded to this by calling MSMEs as an umbilical cord, which should not be allowed to break. Nigerian economy, like we all know, is largely driven by MSMEs. And when I say MSMEs, I mean enterprises employing between 1 and 200 people. And going by the definition of SMEDAN and the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, they make up 90%. They account for 70% of workforce. And what is important here is that for every 10 jobs, MSME creates 7. So capacity to create jobs is important. And what we were told by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics is that we, as at December 2018, we have 41.5 million in Nigeria. And this contributes approximately 49.8% to our GDP. And being the lifeline of the economy, I will rest it there. And the importance has also been alluded to by previous speakers. Then impact of COVID-19 pandemic on MSMEs. Like we all observe, unprecedented lockdown measures enacted by government to contain the spread of coronavirus resulted into the following: supply chain disruption that affected all businesses, MSME being hit hardest. Massive drop in demand of products in most sectors. Perishable agri products sustained one of the heaviest losses. Many MSMEs lost their shops and places of operation as they could not, or they are still not unable to pay their rents and go back to their previous places. And also, the executive director of NESG alluded to the survey by Ford Foundation, which of course revealed that about 95% of us were negatively affected. 22 of us were not sure whether we will come back or not. When I say of us, I mean MSMEs. 30 were sure that the business will not survive. So if you add the two together, which means about 52% of MSMEs are not likely to come back. This is monumental. Now, as a result, the result of unpalatable situation that we have in our hand, our people in some states, they ventured into courier businesses. Now, a lot of these people, especially our people, they wanted to survive. That's survivor. And some of them went into a courier business. And do you know, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Moderator, that many of our people were incarcerated, they were harassed, they were detained. And why was that? They said they've not gotten permit. Yes, we know they couldn't have gotten the permit during the pandemic because no offices were open. And over and above that, these permits they were talking about had not been drafted, no law whatsoever, but they were being harassed for an offense that are already was not on the table. So you can imagine the frustration. These are parts of our experiences that I wanted to share. Let's move quickly to impact of measures introduced by Nigerian government. Slow or non-access of government intervention of 50 billion FME fund and family survivor fund by MSME raises question of delivery mechanism. The funds is coming too slow and too little. The sound of all billions of naira being provided, quote and unquote, being provided for MSMEs to access is as deafening as it could be misleading. Many SMEs, in their desperate effort to access this fund, fell into the hands of fraudsters because some fraudsters took advantage of the situation and they were announcing their names, their numbers, and a lot of our people went through that in the bid to get to the CBN and the Nisra Microfinance. We thank the Development Finance of the Central Bank for coming up publicly and making announcements that we should be careful of those fraudsters. Now, what MSMEs want? Grants is needed and not loans, as it happens in other climes. our members have difficulties in navigating banks and trade-related procedures. So actually, we will request for grants and not loans. You remember this, the 50 billion, if you can count on your fingertips how many of our members all over the Federation got it. And a lot of people still complain about that. Two, we want government to stop interest payments on loan taken by MSMEs. I'm referring to businesses that employ between 1 and 200 staff for 6 months. 4, government should deploy MSME payroll support scheme for 6 months at the minimum. And then 5, products offtake scheme by government from MSMEs will be appreciated. And also 7, 20% of PPE and other COVID-19 related purchases should be reserved for MSMEs. And number 8, government to remove unfavorable conditions that zone off MSMEs in the procurement process in Nigeria. You know, when we go in as MSMEs, we want to partake in the procurement process, there are lots of bottlenecks that zone us off even before you take 1 or 2 steps in that direction. Time will not permit me to, but I know we understand what I'm talking about. Implementation of
1 minute more, 1 minute more.
Thank you. Implementation of business linkage program. Now, the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that government is coming up with good measures. I'm aware that about 4 of these 9 items are being taken care of, but we have not been properly briefed. So I want to encourage government to all those things they've spoken to us about, they should make it to come to reality. If the above mentioned conclusion, if the above mentioned issues are addressed, Nigerian MSMEs will not only have been positioned to post-COVID-19 survival, but to be on the path of competitiveness, which is our key problem, which Nigeria MSMEs needed badly to harness the benefit which the proposed African Continental Free Trade Agreement portends for our Nigerian economy. I thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, and in particular, the list of items that micro and small businesses want from government and the support that they require. Also, just to remind the participants that you can post your questions in the question and answer icon there so that we can take those questions once we finish with the panelists. So now that we have heard from the, I will say horse's mouth for micro and small businesses, let's go to government and hear what they have introduced. Do they address those 9 areas that have been shared with us? What have they particularly been doing to ensure that we support micro, small, and medium-sized businesses? So I will go to Mrs. Teju Abisoye to share with us some of the initiatives that Lagos State had actually put in place to address issues that the micro and small businesses have faced. Thank you, Teju.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lawson, and to everybody on the panel, and then, of course, to the viewership of this summit. I'll just say very quickly that, Prince, we hear you, and we know that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm looking to government, you know, to solve a lot of these issues, but also understand that I think that one thing we shouldn't forget again is that even for government, revenues have drastically dropped. So as a responsible government, there's a level in which you can intervene, but you also have to be thinking of the future. So we're not paying off, our grandchildren are not paying off our debts. But thank you, we do hear you. So for us at Employment Trust Fund, and this is following on the promises of the governor of Lagos State, that we will support the MSMEs to get over this period as much as possible. And since we are created to make sure that there are jobs for the youth in the Lagos State, our concern right now as a government is first job retention before we start talking about job creation. With this in mind, we will be making, we're concluding plans to roll out programs that are post-COVID interventions, and they are sector specific. And this is important that I mention this because we also recognize that some sectors are more hit than others. Some of those sectors that are really having a difficult time now: tourism and culture, where, you know, hospitality, hotels had to ground to a halt. There was nobody was eating out, nobody was going to restaurants. So those kind of things, those kind of businesses need a pick me up. We're not doing grants at all. I will say it up front. It's not a grant structure, but it is more of subsidized loans to these sectors. Second sector we're looking at very quickly is the education sector. Schools are locked down since March. A lot of parents refuse to pay school fees. I know a lot of schools also let go of their staff, and it was not their fault. It wasn't that if they had a choice, they would have done otherwise, but they too could not maintain that. So in partnership with some very, very credible organizations, without letting the cat out of the basket, we will be launching our edu loans, where education sector will be able to find access to affordable financing as well. What we're looking at is we want single-digit interest rates across all our programs. Another sector we're, of course, very interested in supporting is the agribusiness. While we understand that right now, some people were affected positively in the sense that this was a period where they sold more than they could ever have, they've sold in a long time. Also recognizes, that helps us to recognize that they're probably going to create a lot of jobs. And it's actually tied to the federal government economic sustainability plan, where you can actually look at agriculture and see that, look, there are opportunities here for people to not only retain jobs, but to also create jobs. So let's galvanize the sector in such a way that they can quickly get access to the financing they want, and they can begin to create jobs. The interesting thing that we're also doing as an incentive, again, for beneficiaries who have come through our program at different times, is we're renewing loans for our beneficiaries who have now been hit by COVID. So we have examples of people who had 30 staff pre-COVID, and they have evidence to show it. Post-COVID, they've had to lay off about 60, 70%. They're now retaining only 60 to 70% of that. And we're saying that, look, we don't want people to lose jobs. How can we support you to make sure that you can continue your services at the level you were before COVID? So we're going to be doing loans to this kind of beneficiaries immediately, because we don't want to lose the traction they have made pre-COVID. In addition to all of this, critical, like you also said, Prince, is the fact that we recognize that there must be business development support for businesses. It's not money that everybody needs. Sometimes it's just market linkages. Right now we're handling a beneficiary in Ekpe whose problem has been getting her product to the market, so that we can make sure that immediately we can create the linkages with transport companies, with the markets, with the end user, or the business to the consumer, as Prof was saying earlier. So we're going to create these linkages. We're going to provide them the support. We're going to make sure that some of them is restructuring that they would need at this time, being able to go online to begin their business, rather than to make sure that they get online, rather than continue the traditional retail structure. So we're going to be helping a lot of businesses with this kind of support. And we hope we should be live by the 15th of September, all things being as we're planning it now. So we'll be able to share more information. We're available via call centers. We're available online for people to see this. And of course, like I said, it's important that the money comes, but it comes at a very affordable rate. So to Prince's point, we are financing a plan to support the MSME.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Teju. Thank you for sharing with us what the Lagos State, through the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, is doing. Keep up that initiative. And we are certainly also happy to support you as we can. I would now quickly go to Mrs. Aboki to share with us what Kaduna State has done. You know, are they similar to what Lagos State is doing? Do they address some of the issues that Prince Abuade had shared with us? Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here to have this discussion. The MSME sector, as everyone has laid out, is the most critical and important sector in the economic development, especially for us here in the North and I guess everywhere across the country. They provide the largest employment of labor, and so working with them to ensure that they survive post-COVID is very critical to the state. A lot of the things that Teja has spoken about are things that I think are happening across subnationals. It is important that states bring out a plan that ensures that MSMEs have access to finance and access to market. Those are very critical things for us in Kaduna State. So we have been working on a program to ensure that we build capacity of the MSMEs. Ab initio before COVID, we had a lot of skills development initiatives that we are working on, entrepreneurship trainings that we jointly carry out with partners across the education sector, across the banking sector, just to ensure we provide support to SMEs. So what we're doing post-COVID is also to ensure that these programs continue to happen. We have the CAD step where it's really an entrepreneurship training skill that we jointly carry out with the Kaduna Business School to train graduates in entrepreneurship skills. And once that is done, we have a fund jointly with the Bank of Industry where they are able to access funds at very low interest rates, single digits, just about 5%. And they are also handheld to ensure that the programs take off properly. We have also we have some tax incentives that we have put in place to assist the MSMEs to cushion the effect of the COVID. So a lot, especially across the hospitality sector, the agri sector, who have really suffered, had the most hit in this post-COVID period. We've rolled out a lot of tax initiatives that will curtail and cushion the effects of the post-COVID. Just as Prince has said, talked about the business clinics, it is something that we're ensuring would continue to happen to provide the support to MSMEs, ensure that they provide the necessary services that MSMEs need. We'll diagnose the problems, and also what we're trying to do now is to cluster our SMEs to ensure that they're able to get access to finance. So we are working with a consultant that we have engaged to help us drop an implementation plan on how we can support SMEs to ensure that they have access to finance. Where does the state come in? Does the state need to provide some kind of partial guarantees to get these SMEs to have access to these finances that are available across the development partners? What can we do with interagency mediations? How do we ensure that our SMEs have the proper documentation to enable them access these funds? How do we ensure that they have titles to their land, to properties? One of the initiatives that we're carrying along also is to ensure that our market stalls, we have access to mortgage, provide access to mortgage for businesses, for them to be owners of their properties. We're working with our lands agencies to ensure they have titles to their properties so that they have something for securitization when it comes to access to finance. With access to market, we are developing an e-commerce initiative where we're ensuring that we bring in the buyers and the sellers together. We map out the state in a proper way so that there's easy access to addresses and all of that. We are also with the access to market. I jotted something that we're working on. I'm not so sure what. I'll get back to that. So those are some of the things that we're working on in Kaduna State to ensure that we support the MSMEs and that they continue to thrive in this period and post-COVID also. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very, very much for sharing that with us all the way from Kaduna State. And now, so to go to two issues that I believe affect SMEs critically in their operation. One is infrastructure and the other is access to financing. So I will let Dr. Weber Boa talk about infrastructure and some initiatives that have been done in the area of renewable energy. And after that, I will talk about access to finance and what are the innovative models that are out there that SMEs can take advantage of. So, Dr. Boa, over to you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, all, and I hope everyone is enjoying this discussion so far. Yeah, I'll talk quite quickly. Basically, what I wanted to talk about is that one of the missed opportunities that many MSMEs in Nigeria have right now in terms of a way to save costs and become more effective and improve their business continuity is actually to change how they're receiving power. So power is roughly 40% of the operational cost of a typical Nigerian business. And that's whether you're a pretty small SME up to a large corporate. And typically that figure is around 9% globally. So if you think about that, right from the start, there's that 30% cost that power adds to any Nigerian business and obviously makes them uncompetitive. In a time of crisis, obviously, then that's an area that you have to look at to say, okay, can we save costs here so that we can actually survive this crisis? And that cost, that 40% cost, isn't counting the leakages, the literal and figurative leakages that happen through diesel delivery, where whoever is delivering the diesel might not deliver quite what they say they do, et cetera, et cetera. We know what we're talking about. So that could bring the figure up to maybe 50% or even higher of operational costs if we count that in. And then, any power savings that you save from cutting all of that off obviously goes straight to the bottom line. In addition, in a time of crisis, in a country with the struggling power sector that we have, the last thing that you want when supply chains are threatened and all that, or in this case, when there's health issues, is to have to go and either find diesel or have diesel deliveries or petrol deliveries to power your own generator at a time like this. And in fact, in some emergencies, those supply chains will just literally dry up, and so you'll have no power at all. So the solution then is to look for solar power. There are now business models, technologies, and companies in Nigeria providing these services at a cost that now is beginning to work and is done in a way that even a pretty small business can actually access this and address these issues of both cost and business continuity. On sort of the smallest micro level, we have an emerging segment called mobile power. And what this is where you as a very small business can basically rent a large charged battery that you then take to your business, run everything you need, the lights, whatever else, fans, whatever else you need. And then for a fee, then, when you've used the power, bring it back to the charging station at a central place, which is usually charged by solar, and then you replace it and get another one. And that's a way that a very small business can very affordably actually power everything they need without having any generator or anything like that. Then to go up a level, you have what we call solar home systems. These are anywhere from 10 watts to 200 watts. And again, these are systems that can very affordably, once they're installed, can power everything you need in a small business. And while the overall outright cost of a system is higher than what you would pay for an equivalent generator, because of the business models that now allow you to pay a deposit and then pay for the unit over time or pay for the power over time, it actually becomes much more affordable, and you actually start saving money from day one. And then for businesses that are slightly bigger than that, we have the solar energy systems that can do up, 1 kilowatt up to 10 kilowatts. And these are for larger businesses, maybe a pharmacy, a clinic, a small school even. And again, the upfront cost may be slightly higher than a generator, but because of the business models where companies are allowing you to just pay for the power rather than the equipment, it actually is now quite competitive. And you very quickly start saving money over generators, and all of the wahala you have with deliveries, with maintenance and all that all goes away. And then finally, the larger scale, and this is more for clusters, is solar power for markets. And this is something that actually the Rural Electrification Agency is driving all over Nigeria, where SME clusters all over the country are being powered either by solar, and in some cases where we have the resource, by gas, in a way that takes them off the grid, but also gives them a very affordable clean energy solution that helps them survive and reduce these massive power costs that most businesses have. So the recommendation then is to be resilient as a small business and to survive in a pandemic. Obviously, one of the things you have to do is reduce your costs. And so solar is definitely one of the ways to go on this. And all on as an investor, we are investing in Nigerian companies that are doing this. And anyone, if you're interested in what the solution is, where you should go, what companies are reliable, check out our website or look at the website of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria or the Rural Electrification Agency. And on all of these, either our websites or social media and all that, you'll be able to find all the information you need that you can recommend either for your own business or for networks of SMEs that you're part of. All of them will provide solutions, and there's programs from donors, from us, from others, from government that are there to help make it affordable and make it lasting, and again really help with that resilience.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Boa. Thank you very much for that. I sometimes look at renewable energy, especially with the off-grid, as almost transformational as GSM phones were. To the old days of landline. So it's something that we need to scale up and invest in. So lastly,
Absolutely.
I would talk about, access to finance and what is the private sector providing in terms of loans and financing options to SMEs. Most SMEs, one of the critical issues or constraints they say they face when they're doing business is how to get affordable and flexible loans. And in recent times, especially COVID, the banks have actually stepped up to the plate somewhat. First of all, the first thing they've done in terms of reacting to COVID is actually to restructure the loan so that you can give moratorium and reschedule the loan so that they have longer time to pay back those loans and in smaller installments. So for instance, at EdFin for the education sector, because they were all locked down, we gave a 150-day moratorium, so you don't have to pay your loan installments until September, which we had hoped that schools would resume fully, and we are still hoping that they would. So some of the banks have done that. You should go in, renegotiate with your bankers, especially if you can showcase how COVID has affected you. So I know a number of banks have given such concessions to areas like tourism, to the education sector, and even transportation and so on, so that they can actually support SMEs in those areas. And also sometimes also giving even interest rate concessions. Some of the things that the banks have also done is that they've realized that if the SMEs are not in business, they cannot even repay the loan, nor would they even have clients. As the prof pointed out, SMEs are the lifeline of Nigeria, and I would say in particular banks. And that's because if they die, or hopefully we don't expect anyone to die of, how do the banks continue to have customers? So we've seen banks that have come up with initiatives to actually support MSMEs with access to market by ordering more from them, providing access platforms that they can use to showcase their businesses. Some banks even have online websites so that their customers can actually transact, do e-commerce, have access to markets. And I would also encourage SMEs to actually use a lot of electronic channels. So one of the things COVID did was to really highlight the need for using electronic channels, so transfer of funds, using your card or online or USSD is critical for SME so that you can, even if you are not there, you can continue to collect money, you can continue to trade and do your businesses. And some of the banks too have partnered with government, in terms of even the NISTRAL fund at that time. Some banks actually provided training to SMEs so that they can actually access those loans and know how to apply. Also, government initiatives where, some of the things I would say, particularly in EdFin, is that we recognize that we need to reduce interest rates so that during this time, the micro businesses can survive. So we are looking at how to do that, how to have flexible payment options while still ensuring that loans are secure. So money is not free. It's difficult for us to be able to give grants, but I do know that some government organizations have built in some grants somehow into their loans, by offering free services and so on. So there's a lot out there. SMEs that keep record, have structures, provide proper governance, have a board, and can show that they are able to flexibly address their markets, are still able to sell, would be able to get funding. I keep telling people that if you have a fantastic idea with a good team, competent management, and support structures around you, whether with mentors and board of directors, you will find that money would actually be the one chasing you. And you will see that, because one of the key things banks keep saying is that we don't have viable projects to fund. We don't have viable projects to fund. So what do they mean when there are so many SMEs that are complaining they cannot get funding? And really the issue is that the requirements sometimes of banks may be high, but also SMEs need to be structured in such a way, operate in such a way that we are confident enough to be able to advance those loans to you. So as we go along, we can now move into the question and answer sessions. I've noticed that there's a lot of questions on the question and answer board. So I would direct the very first question maybe to Mrs. Abisoye on grants. The micro and small businesses said they want grants. I know in your response, you talked basically that, okay, we can't give a lot of grants, but what do you think about that? Is that something that government should really put in place? What should be done? Over
Okay.
to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lawson again. So yes, I did mention that we're not doing grants. It's not a big portion of all our palliatives, but we do have grant elements as part of our program. But it's structured in such a way that it is meant to help people work. So for example, with our one aspect, let me just talk about two we have. One in the tourism and culture industry. We have grants where we call them vouchers, where people can actually get vouchers to help them work. So they need to be in a workspace, they need to rent equipment. They need things that would, so we don't give them money, we give them a voucher to go and pay directly to the service. We pay directly to the service provider. They just get a voucher that is printed out for them to take. The same way we do this with our technology-enabled companies, where we actually pay for workspace for them, such that they don't need to worry about infrastructure, like Dr. Boa was saying about power being 40%. So we bear that burden as the government, and we let the entrepreneur, the promoters of the business, do their work while we take that off them. It's in form of voucher programs to those businesses. That's that's the area where we actually are able to do grants to businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So thank you. There's been a lot of questions on the question and answer. I will take this one from Dennis Onwugbu. He said, how can government at all levels reduce the bottleneck created by the various taxes that affect movement of goods from one state to another? The high cost of food items is only a reflection of the unattended bottlenecks created by the COVID-19 lockdown. So this issue of taxes, Prince mentioned it when he was doing his presentation, and the prof also, that there are multiple taxes, bottlenecks against SMEs. How can government address this issue? Mrs. Aboki, do you want to lend a voice to this question? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Nelson. I think on taxes, for the subnationals, I believe that a lot of states are doing so much to reduce the cost of taxation and to ensure that there are no multiple taxations. In Kaduna State, we have a tax codification law that vests the collection of taxes in one agency. All local government taxes, all taxes due to government are enshrined in the Internal Revenue Service to collect. And we have only one document that clearly explains the taxes that you have to pay to government. Anything outside that is not acceptable. So it is available online, it is in the public purview, so you know what taxes you need to pay. Where the challenges come, of course, are interstate taxes. So when you're leaving Kaduna and you're going to another state, there may be taxes that you'll be asked to pay that we don't have control over. So it's probably something that states and the federal government need to sit down together and say, how do we ensure that we unify these taxes and there are no multiple taxations? If federal government is charging one particular tax, then maybe the state government should not charge those taxes at all. And the federal government should find a way of ensuring that the states get their own share of those taxes when one single agency collects that tax. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's another question here from Kada, who talks about the need for prioritization and strategic implementation of policies that will help MSMEs. Prof addressed some of this during his presentations. What specific suggestions do you have, Prof, for government to refine policies so that we can actually ensure that MSMEs continue to thrive? As I was discussing, I think a few days ago, we seem to still be talking about the same things around, infrastructure, creating access to finance, these same issues with SMEs. What should government do differently, Prof? Professor Melvin?
Yeah, I want to own ownership for what I say, so I needed to turn my video on, so you know that I'm the one saying it. It's the elephant in the room. It's the corruption in the country. Everybody's dancing around it and talking about tax. It's not tax. It's the police. It's the local government. It's the Ministry of Forestry. It's everybody. Even to enter Lekki Phase 1, they stop you at the gate there. Every time they're fighting with the delivery people, give me money here, give me money there. How can a DPO be driving a G-Wagon? The interstate, it's just too much. So it makes it uncompetitive for anybody to operate. It's been existing in Nigeria, as I said. COVID simply exposed the fault lines. Let me talk about the nerve of the country. Let's start with the oil, the pipelines. If you talk to the people in the ONG, they'll tell you about the losses, and these are not even MSMEs. If you talk to the people from the discos to the GENCOs to the TCN, the power transmission, they tell you about the system losses. The discos, the distribution, the generating companies are complaining about the gas supply, the same transportation and logistics. The transmission company are talking about system losses and tapping powers that people are not paying for. The discos are complaining about the same thing. The agriculturists are talking about post-harvest losses because foods perish, either because the infrastructure is so poor that people can't move it. The few trucks you have to move it, the roads are so bad, they have to keep fixing their shock absorbers. So the cost is too much. Then they have to settle all the people along the road, extorting from them. Eventually, when you get to the supermarket, people can't afford it. And the whole thing is damaged. Even their bookies are being chased up and down. The Okadas people are being harassed. As he said, they're using laws that are not in the books to prosecute people. We know the elephant, people just don't want to talk about it. So we will talk about this and it will continue. And maybe because we can't hold our government accountable. And maybe I can say this and most people can't say it. And few people can say it, but that's what it is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for addressing the elephant in the room, the issue of corruption. I would also add even the issue of leadership. how do we select the leaders that continue to govern us?
I'm sorry, Mrs.
Yes.
Banks are also on my firing line.
Let me put on my armor vest.
Yes, you better, because I'm coming at you. You go to banks to say, give me loan. You say, bring security. But I need the loan so I can make money and buy a house and then give you the collateral. This is the same thing I heard in the 80s when I was working in the bank after the Civil War. The man says to the bank, you want collateral, you want security. How can I get it if I don't get loan, small overdraft so I can make money and build a house and then give it to the bank? More creative lending. The bank is very anachronistic. They sit there, they come, they give you a checklist of the things you have to do. You have to take your customers as you find them, and just like Dr. Boa said, find innovative ways of financing people subject to the constraints they face. Otherwise, they will never break the logjam. Banks are too lazy.
There are lots of it.
Much money.
Let me say that there are lots of innovations that the banks are doing to address the issue of collateral. So, for instance, there is a movable collateral. So now, even with most microfinance banks take movable collateral, which includes your cars, but refrigeration and so on, and even the asset that you are financing. And there are some partnerships where governments even provide guarantees so that you are not even asking for collateral at all. So, but there's a lot more that I agree with you that the banks and even governments can do. One question, I think, Dr. Boa, is that small businesses, can they really afford this power renting that is being discussed? One person said, I'm seriously thinking about a car wash business and barber shops. Can they afford power renting, Dr. Boa?
Yeah, I think it's, can they afford solar power? I mean, look, if they want to run like a barber, if you want to run your barbing business, you need power. You need to at least run your the shaver and all that. You need a light, you need a fan, stuff like that. Now, most of them use a small generator, which again, there's an upfront cost, and then over time they're constantly fueling it, constantly, maintaining it, and you may have a situation where you're in the middle of the day, you have a line of 10 customers, and your fuel goes out, and then you have to go looking for that. So if with solar, you don't have that problem. A typical solar home system now, if from companies like Lumos, et cetera, or Olu and others, and both of those, by the way, have women CEOs, which is also, I think, a good thing for you guys to know. You pay roughly 15,000, 20,000 naira upfront as a deposit, and then you pay, around 4,000 naira, 5,000 naira a month for power. And that can either be sort of renting the system or that you're eventually owning it. For some of them, after about 2 to 3 years, you actually own the system, and then after that, your power is free. And the way that these systems are, if you're a barbing salon, for example, you'd even have a little bit of extra power that you can charge people's phones while they're waiting in your queue, and then charge them for that as well and make some additional revenue. So especially for those small businesses that have clear sort of constant revenue streams and that primarily operate in daytime and then a few nighttime hours, a solar system is by far the best and most reliable. And as long as they get don't try and go get the cheapest system from Alaba market, because that may have problems. Go to the companies that have clear warranties, clear guarantees, clear customer service, and all that. And it can absolutely help their business and make it much more viable, and the power cost goes down, and power is also much more reliable.
Yes, so thank you very much for addressing that issue. One of the things I would like to ask either Mrs. Abisoye or Mrs. Aboki is, how can government help to scale up some of these renewable energy initiatives? I know that most of the initiatives we've talked about are direct to MSMEs. But even maybe some of these solar companies are MSMEs themselves, and they're producing this renewable. How can we scale it up? Who would want to take? Okay, Ms. Abisoye.
Thank you very much. I think in this space, one of the things we've done is work with companies that were first training retailers, but not just training retailers for specific products. We were training retailers with who were not agnostic, as in they could, retailers that would sell any renewable energy products, basically, and making sure that these people could quickly set up their shops in any area in Lagos State to make sure that it was available, so that products are also available for people to buy. And I think it was important because, first of all, you needed to make sure people were comfortable to know that there will be people to fix it if it's bad. There will be people to help to make sure that it's serviceable. All of that is important in educating not only the bottom of the pyramid, but MSMEs to understand the importance of renewable energy and what is available in that space. So we've been doing this and we don't intend to stop. One other thing is these small shops can then, they set up by getting access to this affordable financing provided by government. So we're trying to make sure that we encourage it in that space. Then of course, where we need to set up industrial parks where people can share resources. It's one of the areas that we as Employment Trust Fund are looking at supporting businesses to make sure this thing gets scaled up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Yes, Prince, I would like to ask you this question.
Yes.
Someone says that for the Nigerian economy valued at 150 trillion naira, so a total intervention of less than 3.5 trillion from the CBN is obviously a far cry from reinflating the economy. However, government also mentioned that they too have been affected by COVID with the decline in income. What is your suggestion for how they can really truly increase impact in, maybe it's not only just money. What other ideas do you think MSMEs can come up with in view of the fact that even government is constrained in terms of the area of having adequate funding?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I listened to Teju and Uma's presentation very well and very closely. There are lots. The problem with this country, in my view, is that we are not on the same page. That is, I mean, state governments. I have evidence from my chapter in Kaduna, that confirms what Uma said. I'm coming to the question. List all the taxes in a sheet of paper. Nobody can now take money outside that. And when we are addressing this issue, please remember, Bumi, that the skillness of the 41.5 million MSMEs in Nigeria is towards unregistered. It's towards unregistered. What do I mean by that? Those that are unbanked. So how do we now evolve a program that will embrace these people that takes about 99% of the 41.5 million? So the challenge here is that, yes, I'm aware the shortfall in government revenue, but there are some other things that government can do. For instance, like this taxation. I had the contribution of Prof and all the other discussants. In our view, we say that if government can put all taxes together in a basket, like the example given by Kaduna, and then now say, give a small percentage, let us pay. Our people will rush to it and pay. Small time, you can increase. So that now, for a vehicle, delivery vehicle, for some of us that has probably a vehicle, you count about 15, 16 documents for one delivery van. How do you survive? So, but if these things are listed, and maybe the Kaduna government is giving the lead in this, and I know Lagos State government is also on the verge of that. But let's control what do you accost these people for. I cited an example. How do you arrest our people for venturing into courier services during the lockdown for laws that have not been enacted? We had to go to police station to bail them. Overzealous officials of government, they're also part of the problem. So apart from, other things government can do is this offtake we are talking about. I mean, the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment has also informed us that, for instance, there's offtake, product offtake. Our people produce, they cannot sell. So get a program to take it off from us, pay us, and we will keep employing people. You know how to help us dispense that or dispose or whatever, or give it away or sell. Number two, let all major shops in Nigeria, like this South African shop in Nigeria, let's give them 10% of MSME product must be stocked by you. If you don't, pack your bag and baggages and go away. Now, our people will now be able to, some of us are in food stuff and all that. They can go there and sell, even vegetables. Apart from the offtake, they can link us, business linkage. Link us with large firms. Link us with large firms to say, okay, we have this to supply. We will be in business.
Okay.
So I don't want to take much of the time.
Yes,
but
yes. Thank you.
I want to say that we can still do more, but let's put all the taxes in a basket. Let's now, I know it's difficult because 36 states, but let few states, Lagos, Kaduna, they are moving. Let other states join them. So say, look, in my state, then the problem will now be when we want to cross to another state. It's there. We are resolving it, even with the executive governors of each of the states. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that response. I want to go to the issue of training and education for entrepreneurs. So Daniel Day asked the question, are there any provisions for supporting the entrepreneurial communities that provide support in form of training and education for entrepreneurs? So Mrs. Abisoye or Mr. Abuki can answer. I also want to hear from Nike Adeyemi to share with us what Faith Foundation has done and how that can be scaled, nationwide so that entrepreneurial communities have access to training and education.
Thank you so much. I probably will take this. Of course, training is a critical part of the MSMEs capacity building. You must develop the capacity. And I'm sure, I'll speak for Kaduna State, but I'm sure that other states have this also. In Kaduna State, we have probably about 10 to 12 strategic programs of intent to develop capacity in various sectors, especially in critical sectors where we're promoting, and that's education, health, agro-processing, and others. In doing that, these trainings also come with funding, whereby after the training, their funds are available. For example, because of the importance of women and youth in Kaduna State, the state government has a CADSWEF fund, which is the Women Entrepreneurship Fund that is strategically there to for women and youth to access in the MSME sector. And we have continued to provide these funds over the years. It resides in one of the ministries, and all you have to do is, of course, apply for it once. And this caters from micro to the medium enterprises. So even if you're just someone that's selling akara on the street and you need to expand your business, you would apply, and these funds are available. And the interest rate is just, I think, 5%, and the tenor is really long. We have entrepreneurship programs where we work, like I had said, with BOI to train entrepreneurs. This is strictly for graduates. We work with the Open University to train artisans. So we built a database of artisans, and we use these artisans with our investors that come in. We promote them because we have this database. When we have investors that are coming in to build huge factories or they need capacity in agro-processing, in farming, in backward integrations, we have a database that we can give them, people to build, bricklayers, painters, and all of that. We do that training and then we build a database. We have a yellow pages database for MSMEs across all sectors. So we have that on our websites across the state. So if you're looking for, say, you're looking to find architects, you're looking to find lawyers, you're looking to find, you have a database whereby you can go and find them. We are working with a lot of partners, with DFID, with some banks, in other aspects, technological entrepreneurship, digital economy, and some list of others.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Moderator,
Nike.
can I just
Yes.
say, because I heard the question very well, probably
Okay.
the question here, it belongs to the BDS group.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, and he wants to know, is there any program where he could benefit? I want to advise that he could get to the website of SMEDAN. They are doing something like that now. And then we are profiling them, that is the BDS people. To SMEDAN, we want to redeploy them into some areas and some states. You know, so that one is going on. And I'm aware also that BOI has something like that. They paid some BDS people to work with those of us that they gave loans to. So they work hand in hand. So you could check on BOI website and check on SMEDAN. In fact, they are recruiting right now. That is for SMEDAN to help small and medium enterprises. Thank you.
Okay, Nike, do you want to come in to add something around
Yes, please.
entrepreneur training? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. So I think the first thing we recognize is that they're different. There's not a one size fits all capacity building training support for businesses. You know, there are different businesses in different stages, different types of entrepreneurs with different backgrounds, different experience. And then there are the dynamics across sectors, value chain, also even for demographics. So young people, female entrepreneurs and all of that. And so one of the way we segment our support, and I really try not to use training, but really just that value chain of support is to say, for each of the different stages of an entrepreneur that is coming into any of our programs, what is their knowledge need? What is the background they have? What stage are they? And then what is the knowledge and support that they need to move them either from an idea to a startup, from a startup to a growing business, to be able to help them scale their business. So that's the first aspect in terms of the knowledge. And then the second part is a lot of advisory and hand-holding support. I have a previous background in advisory and consulting. And one of the challenges that we've seen in Faith is that so many businesses, even when you tell them, oh, okay, there are these taxes you should pay, we've talked a lot around the issue of taxes, there are these regulatory requirements you should fulfill. It is a lot of information. Prince Agbade mentioned around the issues of taxes. When we did something a few years ago with NASME, with SMEDAN, there are probably between 44 and 55 taxes that MSMEs in Nigeria are required to pay at all the levels. You know, where do you even start from that? So part of the support and the advisory is providing guidance to say, what are the taxes that you should pay? What are the taxes you should pay at the federal state level? And how do you structure your plans to be able to do that? For a lot of our sessions, some people only realize all the taxes that they are meant to pay by the time they do that. And then they now go and meet with the tax regulator and they realize that they owe a lot of back payment in taxes. So the other thing is now saying, okay, how do you help them to create a plan around that? And what are the things they do? So linking people with advisors from a financial, legal, regulatory space that is required. The third thing I want to talk about is also now sector support. And so when we started out, we largely started out being sector agnostic. But then as the country and as the economy has evolved, and as we have evolved also, we realized that there's some knowledge and information that is now very, very sector specific. So whether it's agribusiness, whether it's education, creatives, and all of that, you are now providing that support and intervention to that. And the last thing I will have to say is that sometimes people just need a community of people to be able to latch on, to be able to share advice, to be able to share knowledge. And we found that even in being very intent around community engagement, people even just get a lot of value being connected to a lot of all the entrepreneurs that are within their space, because information sometimes can move from here to here. So making sure that they're connected with communities, with resources that also provide information to enable to help them. We supported over 180,000 businesses, but that out of 40-something million businesses is still a lot. So we need so many other support and BDSPs. There are quite a lot of people who already do that also within the space too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nike, for sharing that. Thank you, and keep up the good work that Faith Foundation does. There's a question here around micro enterprises. and that 98% of the small businesses are actually micro enterprises, and most of them are not registered with CAC, nor do they have formal structures. What is government doing to assist these unregistered micro entrepreneurs and artisans to have access to intervention funds, capacity development, and financial services? So I want to answer the first part about registration on CAC, and that's it is actually quite easier now. CAC has a platform online. If you do a search on Google, to check looking for CAC, you'll find their website, and you can actually register online for business names. Once you do a search, which you can do online as well, it is easy to get a registration. Then if it's a full limited corporation as well, in fact, depending on the share capital, you may not even need a lawyer for now. So there's a lot that has been done regarding the ease of doing business in the area of company registration. So we encourage all micro entrepreneurs to register. In my bank, for instance, we actually provide support to help schools do that registration. So we do it for them, and they send us all the documents, and a lot of them have been able to get the registration. Now, the issue is, how do they get access to intervention funds? Most of the intervention funds, for instance, NISTRA, was actually online. Do our artisans have a way to actually apply? Abisoye, Mrs. Abisoye, what do you suggest around that? You know, given that most of this may be beyond the reach of the real micros that we want to attend to.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nelson. And I'll just say very quickly that over 80% of our beneficiaries, because as of today, we've supported over 11,000 businesses. And over 18% of this are micro businesses. And I mean micro, like businesses that, first of all, this was their first opportunity or access to credit. And one of the things we did was, first of all, to make sure that we were present at the local government level. So we are present today in 26 local government or LCDA areas, such that if you do not know how to apply online, you can walk into a liaison office and fill out your application so that the liaison officer will help you. If you need additional information, you then take the form and come back with your additional information. This is very critical because we recognize that fact that BOP, at the bottom of the pyramid, a lot of people don't even have the knowledge to use technology in a sophisticated way. Today, they're learning to use USSD. But one of the things we then did again was one of the things we do is that to encourage the small micro businesses to go beyond that level. When you finish paying a loan, the first loan, for you to get a renewal, we expect some level of formalization. And we do that when you collect your first loan. We take you through training, we tell you the basics, why it's important for you to register, how you can pay your taxes in such a way that it's not a burden, or once you understand what taxes are and how you pay it, it becomes easier for you to actually comply. So we do that with our micro businesses, and we've seen a lot of traction where they've come back, now registered, now have a credit history, and want to get additional support. And it's been very successful, impactful on that level, because a lot of them will tell you that was the first time they were having access to training about anything about business details. And it has been very useful for micro businesses. We've seen a lot of renewals. A lot of our renewals are in that space, and they've now come back registered. And we'll continue to do it, that structure with the liaison offices, so that we get a lot of the micros. It's part of financial inclusion for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There's one question that I have been saving because it's in the area of education. So the question is about education loan, that we talked about education loan. That is geared towards the sustenance of schools. Are private schools included? I will answer immediately yes. Come to Edfield Microfinance Bank. We would be able to address your needs in terms of loans and the single digits 1, 2. The private schools in Lagos are hard hit by COVID-19. What is government doing to ensure that private school teachers do not lose their jobs? So a lot is true. I know that a lot of schools, private schools especially, have not been able to pay school teachers, especially because also that schools have been locked down. Parents too have lost their jobs and are not paying school fees. So for teachers who have already lost their job, is there any plan by government to cushion these effects on the impacts of their job? And it is public knowledge that most private schools have not been paid salaries since March due to the outbreak of COVID-19. Is government making any plans to support teachers in private schools through the provision of palliatives, in another word, grants, in cash or other means? So Mrs. Abisoye, please respond there. And Mrs. Aboki, let us also know if there's anything that's been done in the North regarding this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson, but I think I think more than one person asked that question. So what
okay.
We today, as Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, we're not structured for loss of employment benefits. So we don't provide those kind of benefits. What we want to support is organizations. So the school itself may want to provide palliatives to their teachers at this time of some sort, and we're happy to support the school to do that kind of structure. But I think this is an opportunity for people to begin to look at unemployment insurance, the insurance industry as well, because these are now the kind of things we can fall back on in situations where nobody anticipated COVID. It's really a situation that it's been difficult. I know people who've lost jobs, or even, they're not even able to meet, their day-to-day needs that bad. But right now we're not structured to provide unemployment benefits, but it's also an opportunity for the insurance industry.
Okay, Mrs. Aboki, in Kaduna, are there any palliatives for the education sector?
Thank you. Well, for now, the main palliative we have done is the tax incentives, which is that we have deferred the taxes payable by schools till the end of the year. We have also deferred even payee taxes for their staff till the end of the year. We are, we're working with the schools to see what do they want to do for their own staff? How do they want the government to come in? Honestly, it is difficult it will be almost impossible for government to say, yes, we will be able to maybe pay part of the salaries for the school or provide some grants to schools to support their teachers. No, but yes, we are willing to support schools in our own capacity. And I think that the capacity that as a government we can do is to relieve them of paying taxes to government.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the question and answer. I would also give the opportunity for each of the panelists to, just summarize one last word you want everyone who is listening in to take away from this session. So let me start with Dr. Boa. Dr. Boa, are you there? Okay, hello. Okay, great.
On mute and all that.
So,
sorry, what was the exact question?
What is the key thing you want participants to take away from this session from you?
Okay, yes, I guess for me, it would be as MSMEs in a time like this, you often hear, oh, government should do this, government should do that, etc. Yes, government should help a little bit, but you also need to help yourself. So there are innovations that you can look to, solar, others that can make your business cheaper to operate. On one side, there's also other innovations you can use to better connect with your customers. And you need to do some of that. And as a business owner, no matter how small your business, you need to innovate to survive and can't just rely on government all the time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Mrs. Aboki.
Thank you. I think my last point here is that I would like everyone to know that the state for us, the MSME sector is the most important sector for us in building the economy, and that we are committed to working with this sector to develop initiatives that would ensure that they continue to operate post-COVID, and we're committed to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Professor Melvin, one last word.
It takes two to tango. I've been beating down the government and the banks. I also need to beat up the MSMEs too. They need to pay their taxes. They need to be good citizens If you want government to come to the table, you too do need to come to the table. Taxes everywhere are complex. I understand that some of the micro enterprises are illiterate. This is why we need the support. So there's lots of coordination failure. By that, I mean the chicken and egg problem. You need to educate them so they can handle the formalities of growing businesses. And therefore, what the NGOs and the private sectors are doing are very important. We sympathize with both parts, but we need to work as a nation. And so the attitude is very important on both parts. And I thank all of you for making this possible. Let us continue the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Abisoye?
Thank you. I think that what we stress is the fact that we recognize that MSMEs create the jobs, they keep the engine going. And we're here literally to make sure that we support them the best way we can. We'll continue to do this by making sure that they have access to affordable financing. We will partner with the right partner. When I mean partners, with the banks, with NGOs, whatever we need to make sure that we can achieve this. And we will provide support, market linkages, business development support for structure, for markets, and to promote even our businesses. So we're here to support you and we hear you. So we do appreciate feedback as much as possible. If somebody had said there's some emerging problems that nobody's addressing, please let us hear what these emerging issues are so that we can provide the right business support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last but not the least, so the first and last word, I'm giving it to Prince. Please tell us what should participants' key things take away.
And maybe you had 2 minutes for me because we are the, yes. Now,
yes,
first,
go on.
we have been able to establish that MSMEs are seriously impacted by COVID-19. 2, support from agencies is needed. I heard what the earlier one contributor said about we should do something for ourselves. Yes, we are doing that. If you don't have your product registered on time, what can you do? Where can you sell it? So the government is doing something wonderful in that. NAFDAC has lowered the bar. Instead of even coming to inspect, they don't. They just give you a listing and you go on with your business. These are the kind of a thing we are saying. Lagos State did something about 2-3 years back. All our people, instead of giving them rigorous tax details, they just say, come and pay 1,500 or 1,000 per annum. They rush there, they pay, then you capture them. You put them into TaxNet. So Lagos State, please do something again similar to that. Yes, if 10 people are paying, it's more than 2 when 2 people are paying. Law of large number will come in. And also the point concerning the registration. To my colleagues there, MSMEs out there, if you don't register your business, there is no, you will not take any benefit. The offtake the government is working on now, if you are not registered, with CAC, no way. If you don't have BVN, no way. So I'm telling you, all of you, my colleagues that are out there, please go and register. You can do it offline, like Mrs. Lawson said. You don't need to pay any lawyer. And just get there, and you pay reduced value now, which is 5,000. So I thank you for the opportunity given to NASME to be on this panel, and I look forward to being with you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much for that. I also want to thank the participants. Questions still keep pouring in. I hope that the NESG would arrange for some of those that we were not able to take to be answered. A lot of people also want the contact information for some of the panelists, so like the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. I would also ask you to search online. The website actually comes up. Dr. Boatu, people have asked for the contact so that they can place orders for solar power as well. So as much as possible, you can type that in the chat or in the question and answer the panelists so that they have that information and participants can actually and participants can actually get that information. So we have had a very, very robust discussions around MSMEs, and particularly talking about the impacts, the priorities, and strategies that we can use to mitigate the negative impact of COVID. So my own key takeaway in summary as a moderator who would also have the last word really is that we've been talking about MSMEs and development for such a long time. It is truly time to be innovative in terms of the interventions that we come up with. Yes, MSMEs need funding, they need training development, they need access to infrastructure. But how can we be innovative to ensure that this actually translates to successful micro entrepreneurs who are even employing more and more people, and that those employment opportunities are sustainable and not that any economic downturn, we have to let people go or start the whole vicious circle again. We can learn from other countries like China. What have they done in terms of development? Incubators, clusters, creating special infrastructure. Sector being sector, looking at sectors that where Nigeria has competitive advantage and really implementing those policies, addressing the elephant in the room, as Prof said, in terms of corruption and leadership. How do we ensure how do we ensure that everyone actually works towards this common goal of making micro, small and medium-sized businesses sustainable? So we have addressed the impact. We know that COVID has had significant impact, but COVID's impact is almost like a sucker punch to a sick patient. We need to be sure that that patient is healthy and strong, so that even when COVID comes, we are able to punch back. So that's one in terms of the impact. What are the priorities? MSMEs take advantage of all the issues that are out there, the loans, the grants, the ease of doing business, become more conversant with what is going on, take advantage of it. But one of the key things too is help yourself. Help yourself first, so that you are also rightly positioned to be able to take advantage of all the government initiatives. Government is doing something. It may not be enough, but let us be sure that we are on the first rank to take advantage of those initiatives that government is doing and hold them accountable for all the promises that they have made. Let us make sure that they keep to those promises. So the strategies, one for me, is to ensure that it is sustainable. We should try to move away from short-term, quick palliative measures to long-term sustainable capital, for instance, infrastructure. Let us truly explore these innovative ways that we can look at renewable energy, infrastructure, access to finance as well. So in passing, there were the words, I think it was Prof who said it in his presentation, that what is good for MSMEs is good for Nigeria.
Yes.
Let us not forget that. Thank you very much. So with that, I hand over to Nike to round up the session.
Thank you very, 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 very much. On behalf of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and Faith Foundation, I really would like to appreciate our speakers and panelists at today's conversation. Thank you very much, Mrs. Wonu Adetayo, Professor Melvin Ayogu, Mr. Abisoye, Mrs. Uma Aboki, Dr. Wibe Boa, Professor Degun Agbade, and of course, Mrs. Bumi Lawson, for effectively moderating and ensuring that we had very engaged conversations today and rounding up and sharing the highlights. I do also want to acknowledge the presence of a lot of part of the conversations that we had today. So including, I recognize the presence of members from the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency, from Bank of Industry, a few chambers of commerce of industry, development partners, enterprise development centers, and BMOs, particularly the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Scale Enterprises, and also some private and public sector funders and financiers. We thank you for participating in the conversations and encourage you to be part of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group Community of Practice for MSMEs. As we had earlier mentioned when we started, the NESG Community of Practice for MSMEs works to engage ecosystem stakeholders in policy dialogue and advocacy in the areas of capacity building, education and business support, access to market and infrastructure, access to finance, and policy and regulation. If you are interested in engaging and working with the Community of Practice for MSMEs, please send an email to info@nesgroup.org for how to be involved. As we round up this conversation, I would once again like to reiterate that this is a pre-summit conversation leading up to the 26th Nigerian Economic Summit that will take place on the 26th and the 27th of October, 2020. So please do register for the event and send an email to summit@nesgroup.org for inquiries. The interesting thing is that a lot of these conversations that we've had today are the session at the summit that is also focused on getting MSMEs back to business. So you can be sure that all the key conversations, the key thematic areas we focused on will feed into the MSME related conversation during the next 26th summit. So once again, my name is Adenike Adeyemi, and on behalf of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and Fate Foundation, I really would like to appreciate our speakers, our attendants, and the team that has ably ensured that we had a very seamless conversation. Thank you very much, everyone. Keep safe, have a good afternoon, and my very warm regards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.